So we fly into Boston, we get to the House of Blues, and Military Gun takes the stage. And you're a big Military Gun fan, correct?
Huge Military Gun fan. It was what their album was one of my 10 favorite. I don't remember where I placed it in my rankings, but it was the top 10 album of the year. I think it was even top 5 for me last year. I absolutely love that album.
So I liked it. For me, it was probably like a 6 or a 7. Probably didn't crack my top 10, but after seeing them live, that band jumped big time. They are very different live. They're a lot less produced, a lot more raw, a lot more of that punk rock, kind of the sing shout comes through a lot better. They're very good at pulling it off live. Um, they sound like they're hitting those same notes live, which was really great. The two singers playing off each other, it was just awesome.
So Ian Shelton, the primary vocalist, he is an absolute rock star in a band that's not rock star size, but he is an absolute rock star. He's got just oozes charisma. He is an awesome interview. Go to YouTube and just Google an Ian Shelton interview. He's really insightful. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's everything you want in a front man. But he has the chops too. Like, not only is he a great singer for this style of music, he's a great songwriter. He's also a really good drummer. So he drums in Regional Justice Center, which is a
Oh wow.
hardcore band. So that's where I first actually knew about him, and how I found out about Military Gun was because of Regional Justice Center, which was a hardcore band that I love. And I'll just gloss over this real quick, but the backstory is Ian's brother, when he was like 18 years old or something, or 19, 20, somewhere like that. He was really young. He was incarcerated, I think, for assault, and spent years in prison. And so Ian formed Regional Justice Center, which is the name of the facility where his brother was at. And his brother would write lyrics from prison and send them to Ian, and he would perform them in this band. He was the drummer and singer of Regional Justice Center. And to get Regional Justice Center, pure hardcore. I mean, Ian doesn't sing in that. He was screaming in that band, but it was dealing with all the raw emotions of that experience, of what that was like to have a brother become incarcerated, how it just threw a grenade into his family life and the structures around him. And it's really an interesting backstory. And anyways, through that, then I knew then, okay, he had this, what I thought was a side project, Military Gun, which now I would say Military Gun is significantly more popular than Regional Justice Center. But I fell in love with that Military Gun album. I'm a huge fan, particularly of Ian Shelton. He's really a very really creative musical mind, and I'm really interested to see where he can take Military Gun. I think that there's potential for that band to become even bigger yet than they are. I mean, they're definitely growing, but I think they have potential to be even bigger.
So interesting tidbit from Military Gun set. They talked about the song that they did with Manchester Orchestra and how that came to be. And turns out they had no connection to Manchester Orchestra at all, except they were admirers. And, California band Military Gun doesn't know the Georgia band at all. They sent a message, they sent an email or something, got through to Manchester Orchestra and said, hey, it'd be really fun to do a song together. And all of a sudden, Manchester Orchestra had tracks back in their hands,
That's
and the
awesome.
song came together. And then they brought Military Gun on this tour in celebration of the 10th anniversary of Manchester Orchestra's album Cope. But just this speaks to Manchester Orchestra and the people that they are, in terms of what they're trying to build in terms of a musical community out of nothing. They've done projects with all kinds of different people. Phoebe Bridgers covered one of their songs. They've done stuff with Paris Jackson. They seem to
Michigander.
Michigander. They seem to have a very big tent, and they seem intent on making that bigger all the time, which is just really admirable. I love to hear stuff like that.
Yeah. I
Um, Go
before
ahead.
we solely get into Manchester Orchestra, just to tie a bow real quick, and not to derail this into the Regional Justice Center podcast, but it is so his brother got out of prison, and Regional Justice Center just last week put out a new album, and his brother is the main vocalist in it now, and they even got Taylor Young, who produced the album. He's the brother, him and Colin Young, who does the Hard Lore podcast. They're brothers. They're in the band Twitching Tongues. Taylor Young has produced so many great hardcore albums. He's sort of the Rick Rubin of hardcore. Like, if you want an awesome producer in hardcore, you turn to Taylor
That's
Young.
funny. That's
And
funny that to
yeah.
be the Rick Rubin of hardcore.
Yeah, he probably Taylor Young would probably hate that comparison, but I just mean in terms of like he's like the go-to guy. Like if you can get him, if you're in hardcore and you can get Taylor Young to produce your album, like you'll do that. He did the first Regional Justice Center album. He did the Military Gun album. He did Year of the Knife. On and on and on. So many albums that he's done over the last couple of years that have been phenomenal. So it's a really good album. The new Regional Justice Center album, it's called Freedom, came out last week. So worth checking out if you're into hardcore at all. So anyways,
Yeah.
we can cycle back to Manchester Orchestra, and I'll let you
Yeah.
talk. But
So all due respect to Pearl Jam and any other live bands that are going today, my hot take is that I think Manchester Orchestra is the best current working live band. I think of all the rock bands that I actively listen to who's putting out important work to add to their career at the moment, I can't think of anybody doing it better live than Manchester Orchestra. They're tight. The Andy Hall sings his ass off every single show. He never takes a note off. Andy Prince on the bass is one of the most entertaining dudes I've ever seen live. Um, Rob singing the harmonies and Tim on the drums. It's a well-oiled machine, but not so well-oiled that it feels stale or boring. I also have some issues with bands playing entire albums front to back, which we've talked about, but Cope worked. It's not even close to my favorite Manchester Orchestra record, but this album just flows. It belongs. It doesn't hurt to hear it front to back. It was really great. So they played the entire album it was so funny. After the scripture, Andy Hall had to stop the show because a fight broke out in the pit. It wasn't really a mosh pit per se, but a couple of guys were like getting into it and needed to be separated. And Andy would just like looked at them dismissively and was like, "You go over there. You go over there." During this song of all songs, and he restarted the whole thing. And they restarted after the scripture from the top. Then they closed their main set with the silence, and then they came back for the encore. They played the Maze, the Gold, Bedhead, and crushed the room with Shake It Out. And I'm getting chills even talking about it. If you have ever listened to this band at all and you haven't seen them live, you absolutely have got to do it. They are so good. But a lot of what we were talking about with the saturation of tickets, I don't think the show sold out. You're in a city like Boston where everybody thinks of Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Boston College, but there's like Emerson, Berkeley. There are 100 colleges in Boston, and they didn't sell out the show on a Saturday night at the House of Blues, which is right out it's on Lansdowne Street, which is just over the Green Monster from Fenway. It couldn't be more centrally located. I was kind of blown away. And that's not to take a shot at anybody. It's just probably to recognize where we are in terms of the concert industry.
And that's interesting because you and I saw Manchester Orchestra together here in Columbus, 2-3 years ago. And they
very
played
similar venue to the House of Blues.
Kemba Live. They played the indoor section, and that room was packed. That show was absolutely packed. So, little surprised actually to find out that they didn't sell that out. And I'll just echo everything Craig has said. I saw Manchester Orchestra over a decade ago on their Mean Everything to No One. Is that, I always screw that up. Is it
Mean Everything to Nothing.
Mean Everything to Nothing? I saw him on that tour at the Newport in Columbus, and they were great then. But seeing them on the Million Masks tour, like just a totally different band. Like they had matured in so many ways. Such a better live sound for the band. Like just they're like the perfect band for that size of venue. I was just blown away from beginning to end of that show. Absolutely loved it. And like it's funny because, you know, I think I'm sure I probably talked about this before, but Cope was kind of the album where I officially went all the way out on Manchester Orchestra for a while. Um, and I just really fell out of touch with them. And it wasn't until The Million Masks of God came out that I sort of got back into them. But I can actually like appreciate what you were saying. Like I can hear how to see this in a live setting, some of these songs might translate a little bit better when you're in the room with them performing those songs. It's like I don't think it's a particularly great studio album. Like it's to put it on and just listen to. I think you really have to be in the right sort of mood or frame of mind for it. But to be in the room with them performing those songs, I actually can see how that would really suit those songs really well.
Well, and I don't want to, you know, is it called retcon, where you retrofit the story later?
Sure.
But I think Cope, if you really think about it and look back on it today, I'm combining two things. Number one, that was the first album where Andy Prince had joined the band as the bass player. And number two, I heard a story, I think it was the podcast, I can't remember which podcast, maybe You Made It Weird. Andy Hull was on there, and he talked about how they were playing a festival or some big show, and they were all just kind of miserable, and they were acting kind of sullen on stage. And I think Andy Hall said that Andy Prince looked at everybody and pointed at the crowd and said, "Hey, they're all having a really great time. What if we did too?" And so if I'm remembering it all correctly, and that Andy Prince was the one who said that, and he's the one who joined the band for Cope, and that's kind of the second phase of the band, it makes a lot of sense, because I saw them on the Simple Math tour, and granted, the Cleveland audience at the Beachland was a little bit overserved, which Cleveland audiences tend to be, and they were making too much noise during all the precious moments, and Andy didn't deal with it well. He was kind of pissy about it, and rather than dealing with it and making the best of it and owning the room, he kind of let it bring him down and bring the band down, and he was just kind of pissy. There's no other way to say it. And that band, I don't think that band exists anymore. Even when he's breaking up a fight in the middle of after the scripture and restarting the song, like they're just more mature. They're more road tested. But not stale and not sterile. They're just awesome.
I'm all in totally here for the Andy Prince appreciation moment here. He is, I mean, setting aside like Les Claypool, who is in a category of his own when it comes to like everything you would want in a live bass player. Andy Prince is that. I would like. I'm biased here, but I would put him and Jeff Ament as two of my absolute favorite bass players to see live. There you see, bass is the first instrument I played. I have a soft spot in my heart for bass players, but very often when you see live bands, the bass player isn't in the forefront of your attention. A lot of times they can easily be drowned in the mix and they're just kind of in the background playing. But I would say that Jeff Ament and Andy Prince are two bass players that are much more upfront. They're an integral part of that live experience. The way they play translates so well live. You notice what they're playing live. And here's another one I would throw in there is Oh my gosh, what's her name? Who just got fired from the Pixies? Paz.
Paz Linchanton, or
Yeah. She was also awesome live. She had a presence to her live that was great too. But yeah,
didn't she
Andy
play with
Prince.
the Perfect Circle for a while as well?
Yeah, she did. She did. She might have even played with Smashing Pumpkins. I think maybe.
I think you're right.
She's like in that like circle, in that world. All those, it seems like a lot of members between the Perfect Circle, Smashing Pumpkins, all kind of have some interchangeable parts. But
Yeah.
yeah. But and Andy Prince is just like, he carries a massive presence online, and like obviously Andy Hall is obviously the main focus of attention.
Oh yeah.
It's his band, don't get me wrong, but
As
like,
goes Andy, goes Manchester Orchestra.
right. But Andy Prince just adds this dynamic that I really felt like maybe they were lacking prior to that. So I'm here for
I'm
all the
just gonna play
appreciation.
fan fiction and assume he's the glue guy.
Yeah.
He's the glue guy, and
Yep. We can
until
project. We
proven
can project
otherwise.
on that. Yeah.
All right, so that was Saturday night.